Hey guys, Marcock here, and today I'm going to be talking about Riley J. Dennis, a person who has a lot of controversy, or as the cool kids might want to say, controversy around this person. And they have said in the past things like, oh, if you don't like what I like, then you're a Nazi. So today I'm going to be talking about this person, and I'm going to be reviewing one of her newest videos, which is titled, What It Means to Be Offended. I'll leave this video in the description if you want to sell your soul to Satan and go watch it. But that's up to your own thing. Your discretion is advised if you have a brain. So, but today we're going to be reviewing it, or at least I am, and at least you'll have me here to comfort you in knowing, actual factual information and no or little to no contradiction or hypocrisy here, because this person is a very big hypocrite. And yeah, so let's do this.
Hey everyone, so today I want to talk about what it means to be offended.
Hey everyone, I want to talk about this person.
Because depending where you are on the political spectrum, when you hear this word, there's a good chance you think of people on the left being offended.
This could be attributed to the fact that most people on the left are massive pussies, but this also could be attributed to the fact that most people get overly offended at literally nothing, and they really the only argument they can have is I'm offended and you're racist because X, Y, and Z.
Possibly by things you find trivial or nonsensical.
Yeah, people like you that are pretty far left like to call people like me and Mythic Dystopia and Retardo McStardo, aka Bryson, and people like Rags, racist and Nazis because they don't personally like our faces, and we're a dirty Caucasian person, so we must burn in hell.
And there's a reason so many people have this association with the word offended.
Yeah, because not many people will use it unironically anymore. It's so oversaturated that everybody likes to say it. It's their new favorite word now. And it's probably the most said word in all of ever because so many people get their panties in a wad over nothing.
It's because people on the right for a long time have been using it to insult people on the left.
If you were to spend any amount of time on the internet, you would know that this is demonstrably false. You do realize that most people on the left do what you're talking about. What's actually going on is literally the polar opposite of what you're saying, and it's very disingenuous for you to imply that the right is doing this and not the left.
So much so that its meaning as a way to insult liberals and leftists has kind of seeped into the mainstream.
It is quite literally, and I'm saying literally because it's literally the polar opposite of what you're saying.
But it's not just people on the left who can be offended. I mean, I'm pretty thoroughly leftist, and there's a strong argument to be made that lots and lots of people are offended by my videos.
Yeah, like when you call an entire crowd of people, mainly being straight white males, that they're homophobic, transphobic, racist, sexist, misogynistic, and discriminatory, all because they have the wrong opinions and they're straight white people from the alt-right community that seek to destroy all blacks. When you call an entire group of people a name over no merit, then you might just get a little controversy. But has that idea popped into your mind at all, Riley J. Dennis?
So what does it really mean to be offended? Some people use it to mean they don't like something. Others use it to mean they find something harmful or dangerous. And others use it just to mean that they're upset by something. It has different definitions that mostly seem to change depending on your politics. Leftists who say that offends me often mean that is dangerous and will cause a lot of harm.
Exactly, they do like to say that they're offended. Especially if you're white, or straight, or male, or even worse, all of the above.
But right-wing folks and some centrists likely hear that simply as, I don't like that. And those are very different meanings that can lead to two people having a conversation that goes nowhere because they aren't properly communicating to each other. Every time one of them says something, the other one hears it in a different way. But the truth is, everyone is offended by something. I don't think there's anyone who's so pleased with the way the world is and with everyone in it that they would never be offended by anyone or anything. Leftists are offended by actions that are being taken to restrict the rights of queer people.
What rights are being taken away? Because I checked your description, and you don't have any sources for that. You know, you linked sources for a lot of your other videos, even if they're wrong, but you still linked them. But in this video, you didn't link any sources. I'm looking at it right now. You didn't link any. So what rights are being taken away? You know, you have to either explain or back your shit up before you make such a gratuitous claim.
People on the right are offended by the existence of queer people.
You know, it's just the far right that are offended that queer people exist, not the right in general. That's very disingenuous for you to say that. That is very hyperbolic. You should probably think about what you're saying before you actually say it, you moron.
They just don't call it being offended. Even if you don't think you never get offended, you're probably offended by people who are easily offended. Every time I've called right-wing people offended for something that they were clearly offended over, I get the same 3 cookie-cutter replies right back. No, I'm not offended. I just don't like that. I just have a problem with it. I just think it's dumb. Something like that.
First of all, then they're idiots if they can't explain why it's offensive, and if they just get defensive when you think that they're offended over something, then they're just idiots, and you should really not be giving them any power or attention by mentioning these kind of people in the video. You should really only be paying attention to the people that actually can explain their point of view or actually back it up. Why do you give these kind of people attention or any form of power at all?
But those are all just different ways of saying that you're offended by something. You can say it in a different way, but at the end of the day, you're still offended. People put that label on me all the time, saying that I'm offended by X, Y, and Z when I've never said that I am. I've just said that I don't like it or that I have a problem with it.
The fuck?
Every time I've called right-wing people offended for something that they were clearly offended over, I get the same 3 cookie-cutter replies right back. No, I'm not offended. I just don't like that. I just have a problem with it. I just think it's dumb. Something like that. But those are all just different ways of saying that you're offended by something. You can say it in a different way, but at the end of the day,
You literally just said that if you say that you're not offended, but you don't like something, then you're still offended, and that's just another way of saying that you're not offended. But then you go out and say, I'm not offended, I just was saying I didn't like it. You realize how hypocritical and stupid that makes you sound, right?
For some reason, I'm offended and they are not. Sure. But really, being offended doesn't inherently mean you're in the wrong or the right. Because for almost everything that happens in the world, somebody is offended by it. And sometimes they're right to be offended by it, and sometimes they're not.
Everyone has a right to be offended over whatever they want, but also everyone has a right to criticize them for being offended over stupid shit.
We only have the rights we have today because the people who came before us were offended by the lack of rights they had and they fought to improve that situation. But on the other hand, sometimes people get offended by stuff because they're hateful or misinformed.
Yeah, people that they're just so hateful and so misinformed. People like you, Riley J. Dennis. People like you are hateful and misinformed.
If I say I'm a lesbian and that offends you, tough shit. Because that's me. You may be offended by my identity, but I'm allowed to be who I am. The fact that you're offended doesn't mean that anything about me has to change. It just means you need to work on not being offended by my identity. And likewise, if I tell you to vaccinate your kids and get your flu shot, and by the way, please vaccinate your kids and get your flu shot, that's going to offend anti-vaxxers. The people who believe that vaccines are harmful, even though literally all of the evidence is stacked against them. They're offended not because something in the world is truly doing harm, but because they're misinformed. And that's what I mean by being offended doesn't automatically make you wrong or right. Sometimes it's good and compassionate to be offended because you don't want harm to come to you or others. Other times it's just hatred or misinformation that causes people to be offended over nothing. So that's the weird thing about the phrase being offended. It has several different meanings, everyone feels it, but lots of people think they don't, and it says nothing about whether you're wrong or right or even why you're upset. All of that together is basically why I don't say that I'm offended, ever. I'm sure I have in the past at some point, but for the last, couple years or so, I've made a conscious effort not to say I'm offended.
Yeah, guys, I don't specifically say I'm offended, but I do call you a sexist, racist, bigot, homophobe.
The exception is when I'm joking. I feel like I use it sarcastically a lot. The fact that you don't like pineapple on pizza offends me. But when I'm being serious, instead, I say something that more directly gets at how I'm feeling and hopefully conveys my message more effectively and can't be misconstrued.
Cough, cough.
So I'll say that something is harmful or hurtful, or that it...
You literally said 2 minutes ago that saying that something is harmful, hurtful, or I don't like it is another way for saying that you're offended. Did you not?
Furthers oppression or marginalization, or that it's racist or homophobic, whatever particular thing I don't like. I try to basically explain why I don't like it. I try to focus on its impact and what it will do to people. And we shouldn't have to do this. We should be able to say that we're offended and explain why and have people listen to us. But often in conversations or arguments, people will shut down if you say that you're offended.
Because people like you and your ilk like to say that for no reason.
Simply because it's become such a buzzword with an implied meaning of being irrational. So it sucks that we've lost a word that could convey how we felt about harmful stuff, but I just personally don't ever find it useful anymore.
Well, at least we can agree on one thing.
In every instance where I could say I'm offended, there's a better way for me to say that. A way that will actually have people listen to me instead of shutting down. And if you're trying to have a conversation with someone and convince them that something is bad, you want them to be open to listening to you. So my little bit of advice to you is to drop that word from your vocabulary. It hasn't solved all of my issues with communicating ideas to people, obviously, but I do think it's helped. And you're by no means obligated to do this. If you want to say that you're offended, go for it. I'll support you in that. But this is just one little thing that I thought I might share with you in case you want to use it. Obviously, not all arguments are had for the sole purpose of convincing the other person in the most effective way possible.
What? Did I just hear you correctly? Like, do I need to go rewatch that? Yes, you really just said the arguments are not all had for the sole purpose of convincing the other person the most effective way possible. Why else would you start an argument if you're not trying to convince them in the most effective way possible? What do you think an argument is? It's trying to convince another person that has an opposing opinion or thinks a different way. That's the only reason you argue with someone. You don't just argue. You don't argue with someone because you like the same things. You argue with someone because you have differing opinions. What the fuck do you think an argument is? I don't understand.
Sometimes you're just angry or sad or hurt, and that's okay. This is just an option I'm laying out for you in case you want it. So yeah, offended isn't a very useful word anymore. And now right-wing folks are doing a similar thing to triggered, which is a real genuine term in psychology that refers to things that cause a person to relive some form of trauma. Triggers are a very serious thing, and now that word is being co-opted by the right to have the same useless derogatory meaning as offended.
Yes, triggered is a term of when someone or something triggers a PTSD attack in someone that has gone through very serious trauma, but it's also a meme in modern culture. You are so out of touch, it's unfathomable.
And with that catching on in the mainstream, it makes it harder for people to discuss their legitimate psychological triggers without being mocked. Like, I know language evolves and changes constantly, and in the long run, it's useless to try and stop it, but it still sucks to see the right wing so effectively move their derogatory language into the mainstream.
It's not just the right wing. There's many people that are centrists or leftists that say triggered as a meme. It's not just right people. You are so disingenuous, it's unbelievable. I just don't understand how you can believe this. I genuinely can't understand how you actually believe something that is so just demonstrably false.
And I think it's important that we fight back on it to some degree. If you care about protecting those with psychological triggers that force them to relive past trauma, don't say triggered when you mean offended. There are a bunch of other ways you could say that phrase, and we could shape language to evolve in a different, better way. Because I know that language never stays static, but we can at least nudge it along a kinder path. Anyway, that's all I had for you today. If you'd like to support the production of future videos like these, and also be my favorite person ever, you can click over here to check out my Patreon, where you can unlock some cool rewards for this channel. And if you want to subscribe, you can click up here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
This video is a perfect example of Riley J. Dennis's hypocrisy, and just this video and the YouTuber and the person itself is a shining beacon of the left's massive contradiction to itself and its hypocrisy. This video would probably prove to a lot of people how much of a hypocrite you can be if you're on the left. Yeah, right people, granted, can be hypocrites too, but leftists are massive hypocrites. They say nothing based on facts, they contradict themselves, and they only talk about things based on their opinions and their feelings. They're not smart people. Sure, some people on the left can be smart, and I've met people that are smart on the left, but SJWs like this are not smart people. They make declarations, they make assumptions, but they don't back them up. They don't question, they declarate, they command. They don't ask or say, he is a racist, and this is something that he said that was racist. No, they say, he's a racist, get him out of here, or he's a racist, and he misgendered me, so that's a hate crime. People like this are vile and envious. They're extremely hypocritical, and you should not want to strive to be like them. Until next time, this was Marcock, your favorite fucking 16-year-old on the internet. See you next time.